happens over where if we have someone that is trying to fix what appears to be an error in the taxon backbone, how they go about doing that can potentially end up with these disassociated records. It can inaccurately reflect like what is actually recorded on the label without them knowing what's going on. Does this make sense? So if someone's making an edit to the taxon backbone and there's a record attached to a name that's like a homonym, um, correcting the authorship on that name is not necessarily the way to do it. Like we would want to actually retain the homonym in case the specimen label actually is using that homonym. And plays into this whole idea of like taxon concepts and that sort of thing. Um, so anyway, there apparently is a way to. So currently in the SINAP portal, there are restrictions on our abilities to handle homonyms and those sorts of things because I think the field has a constraint on it that allows unique values only. And I think my understanding is that the Lichen portal team has removed that restriction so that in the SciName field, essentially where the binomial is concatenated, it will allow duplicate values, which in turn allows them to accommodate homonyms and that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
I think the taxonomic advisory group could probably help too, because I mean, especially with issues we ran into. My question for that would be if there is interest. I know Alan Weekly would be interested in that too. But it would need to be over, well, I mean, multiple, and he deals with southeastern, well, not southeastern, but the eastern seaboard more so than anything. So if we do have a taxonomic group, it would be great to have people from who are working with taxon all over the United States. So if there's interest in that, let people know. I can send out, I guess, a feeler email for people. And we're happy to facilitate that if that's something that can come up or something that we want to handle.
And how would that taxonomy advisory board work or operate? Would there be a portal where, problem is raised and then let everybody who is connected, add an input, or what form would they operate?
So Herrick, remind me, so right now, when on SERENEC, if there's a taxonomic issue, it's like you and like three other people who fix it, right? Or a couple of like there you have to be a taxonomic editor, or how open. I'm not saying it should be more open, but I'm just trying to understand how open is that system right now.
Yeah, I don't really know. I know that, well, super admins can do those sorts of things. I think they can, I think there might be another switch that allows folks to make edits to the taxon tree. Um, and I'm not sure like how that goes about happening. I mean, the whole thing sort of came up because Jenny Clues at LSU had sent me a note saying that she had corrected a misspelled name, which appears to be entirely a legitimate misspelling. Um, like a keystroke error when the record was entered. It's not even reflexive of what was entered on the actual physical label. And there were like two records that were attached to this misspelling. So she corrected it. Um, but it just it made the hair on my back of my neck or whatever stand up. And because I always get really worried that those sorts of edits have these trickle down effects that while it may be correct taxonomically speaking, it may not be an accurate reflection of what is recorded on the label. And that I feel is like making edits to the specimen records that aren't really intended to be made.
Right.
So, at any rate,
So,
I don't think I answered your question. As far as I know, it seems to be pretty limited in terms of like who's granted these permissions. And I don't know if that's a matter of like reaching out to help at Symbiota to say, hey, I'd like to be able to have these special powers or that sort of thing. But again, it's like my concern is that I don't think it should just be granted to anybody that thinks they're, an expert on a taxonomic group, because I don't know. What I want to know is that those individuals understand the potential ramifications of making an edit to a name that has hundreds of thousands of records attached to it, and what that might mean for the rest of the community.
right. And curators have told me repeatedly here and in other states, their goal is to get the name online and to accurately reflect the record itself. But that doesn't always match up with the taxonomy backbone. Um,
Can I make a suggestion?
no, go for it. Yeah, no.
I primarily work on lichens, and I enter data live into the lichen portal, which is kind of like under Symbiota as well as for vascular plants. In fact, I was just reviewing a record earlier from another institution, and one cool feature that this portal has, and I don't know if SERENEC does or not, I hope they do, is a comments field. So like if you see an error from a label image that is not, in agreement with what the record says, you can leave a comment and saying, hey, the label says this, where the record says that. You may want to relook at it this, or you can make other comments regarding the taxonomy, saying that, hey, this taxon has changed, and here's a reference for that. So, I think having a comment would be a better option than to, give, permissions to, just, change, records identity, for another institution. I mean, if you do it for your own institution, that's a different matter. So, on that note, I agree with Herrick. So does SERENEC have a comments field per record?
It does.
Okay,
It
good.
does. Yeah, I like that. Well, and there was something else that, so it's interesting with like the taxonomic issue as well. I pull a lot of data from SERENEC and Lichen Portal and Brio Portal, and one of the things that comes up consistently that I am learning about, so I'm far from an expert, I am very much just learning this, is that there are synonyms that are, in essence, regional synonyms. So because somebody hasn't done the work to do a taxonomic revision. So for an example is because a lot of times I'm using weekly, and so I will go and I will look at weekly's flora because it's on the eastern seaboard, and then he will list that there is only one synonym for X species, and then you go to SERENEC and then you search, and there's like 5 synonyms. And so I'm starting to understand that's because what weekly is just talking about the eastern seaboard, not necessarily the entire world. But I don't understand precisely how that synonymy works or how to address it. And the way that I address it is that I have an export for Weekly's Flora, and so I can create a synonymy database for myself, and then I just use the taxon ID from SERENEC. I don't use the I don't use a synonym search. I just search specifically by the taxonomies that Weekly has identified as the synonyms. Although, Harry, can you speak more about what's happening there? Because I know that
Where I'm
that
sorry.
why. No, it's okay. Like, how and why is it that like there are synonyms that only apply to like geographic regions?
Well, I think what you're talking about is just more sort of the concept of what should be accepted or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Um, but yeah, so I mean, in my opinion, the weekly et al. Tend to lean towards splitting and elevating things to species status, which sometimes is not necessarily reflexive of the worldview of a taxon. However, we in the Southeast tend to, and I'm, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but most folks in the Southeast agree that Weekly's team has done a very good job of vetting those sorts of things. And usually, if they do some kind of potentially controversial elevation or split of something to make a like a variety or something a standalone taxon, there is some justification given in the taxonomic treatment there. And I appreciate that. And that's one of the sort of shortcomings of some of the bigger, more widely used nomenclators like Tropicos or Plants of the World Online or whatever, is that they just kind of assume that everybody thinks that they're the gold standard and present the name as is, and everything else in synonymy. And it's not very clear to me whether those are put into synonymy because they're a junior synonym or somebody else found that they were genetically identical. The things that were being called different names are genetically identical, that sort of stuff. So I think that's part of the issue, is that there's a little more scrutiny within the southeastern region where we tend to split some of those things out a little more finely than if we were looking at North America as a whole.
Well, and
Does that
sorry, the
make sense?
one of the examples, I think it was like a penstemon. And so one of the penstemons, I don't know, it was found in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and I think parts of Florida. And there was only one synonym, but then out west, there was another synonym, and they were saying that it actually was equal. And then Weekly said that the issue was that's actually probably not a synonym. It's actually probably just needs some taxonomic research to have the synonym that's out west to be defined as a different species. Okay, well, synonymy is always complicated.
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, we're human and we're defining things based on what's familiar to us. So we're still learning as we go along. It's always
Go
going to
ahead,
be
Jen.
a state of change.
Sorry.
Yeah. I guess I should probably introduce myself to this group too, but my name is Jen Yost, and me and Mike Simpson here, who's also on the call, are from the California Consortium of Herbaria. And anyway, it's awesome to hear your group talk, because we have all of the same issues. Like, this could be the agenda from our consortium meeting as well. But I also work really closely with the Symbiota team, and the only point I wanted to make about synonymy and the taxonomy table is that people often want the taxonomy table of your Symbiota portal to reflect the taxonomy of a flora. And that is not philosophically what that table was designed to do for the portal. It was designed to allow records to be discoverable within a taxonomic hierarchy. And so, and what that means is, like, if you have a name that is linked to a name in your taxonomy table, then whenever that name is searched, those records will come up, even if they have a different name on the label themselves. So the idea there was that it's a data discoverable thing. Like, you want that record to come up in the search because it's associated with that taxon in somebody's taxonomy, and so sometimes the taxonomy table of your portal can actually reflect multiple different taxonomies through this linking as synonyms. And so it's Anyway, that's the only thing I'll add. We struggle with that because in California we have a really close relationship with our state flora and our portal, and we also want them to be like a one-to-one um, relationships to like clean up the taxonomy. Um, but then as soon as you get outside of California, the taxonomy is sometimes different. And so, the point is you want anybody who's working within your portal to find the records they're looking for.
That's a really good point. So maybe we should reframe our thoughts around the synonymy as more of like a search tool rather than representing the local taxonomic research.
And I mean it's a constant point of sort of like good academic tension, and because people want to use the portals to reflect their taxonomy. So like there's a group that is creating an oak portal right now where they will solely use the portal as a monograph of the genus Quercus, and so I totally get it. And it's up to you guys to decide how well or in which ways you want to curate that taxonomy table.
Yeah, if I can add to that too, yeah, I
Mhm.
agree, and that's something that I struggle with too. Like sometimes if I'm adding a name or whatever, and weekly elevates it to species, but I just don't buy their reasoning or something, or there's compelling evidence to the contrary, I'll keep the name, I'll add the name, but I'll keep it in synonymy. My point is to like accommodate the various combinations so that we can capture what is on the specimen label, and I don't care if it's like accepted in the Southeast and not in the rest of the world or whatever. It just so long as those linkages within the synonymy are correctly um, built so that, like you said, Jen, so that the data are discoverable whether you search on the accepted name or a synonym of it. Yeah.
I'll have to mull on this. I mean, no, that's not in a bad way. I'm just thinking from like a data side, if there is a way to replicate what I do. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain that well. So what I do when I'm pull data, because I use SERENEC regularly to build profiles of our native species in South Carolina. Um, I don't rely on the synonymy of the SERENEC taxonomy. I just download all of the data and then I have my own table of like SERENEC, I have SERENEC taxon ID and I have weekly ID. And then I have like what is the accepted ID. So I have my own table that I use for synonymy, for and statistics, like how, where this does this plant show up in how many counties and how many and what are the unique counties and everything. So I just don't, I'll have to think if there's a way that I can kind of sort of help by, because that's just an Excel spreadsheet of synonymy versus, um, anyway, I'll think about that because that might help people when they're downloading data. But I mean, to your point about the taxonomic advisory group, Herrick, we can circle back to that. As far as logistics, I think someone asked, this comes up frequently, and I feel like it comes up frequently. Eric and Sam, who are our field botanists here in South Carolina, are having questions and they are um, describing new species. Maybe like a quarterly meeting about like some of the new species and like what changes shouldn't happen. Or not quarterly, sorry, because that might be too frequent for people, but maybe like once or twice a year would be a good idea. Because I think you're right, Herrick, that it's probably not a good idea for everybody to be have super admin and to be changing things in the portal on the fly. But maybe I can organize a meeting once or twice a year where people can bring in the synonym or the taxonomy that they would like changed and with explanations for you. Or do you think it's better to have some sort of submittal form that you can review when you have time? So if someone feels very strongly, we can set up a form so that people can submit it to you and then you can review it and change it as needed.
If folks are going to use the form, that would be great. Like one of the things that helps is like if they're suggesting a change is a link to or a DOI for a document that uh, you know has that published name string in it, whether it's a recently published article or if it is in one of the online nomenclators, those sorts of things. But basically, what I try to build into the edits that I make is a paper trail where I can be blamed for making the edit, and I can blame someone else for the justification of making that edit. So I record in there on each of the tax. So the problem is that it's probably buried into the database back end of the taxon name table, like who's making the edit and when they make the edit. But I don't know that everybody that makes edits to the taxon tree records that information so that we can understand why those changes were made. And so that we don't like go, like if somebody has disagreement with the Southeastern concept of the synonymy, and they flip it back to what it was before, that could happen multiple times until somebody has this conversation. If you don't know who's making those changes, you can't have that conversation because it's just a mystery. So in the taxon name fields, I always record in a comment like added by me on this date, and then I put the URL to Plants of the World or Tropicos, or if it's an actual recent publication that hasn't been incorporated, I'll put the link to that publication. And so those are really the kinds of things that I'm talking about in terms of a taxon advisory committee, is like how to be better stewards of the taxon tree, and how do we record, what sort of standards do we want to promote in terms of, what is the best practice for making these sorts of edits and that kind of stuff. I don't really want to get into the whole taxonomic concept bit, or I don't want to be a nomenclator, because Plants of the World and Tropicos and IPNI, all those do that. They have people that are paid full time to do those sorts of things. And what we are doing is just trying to most accurately capture the information that's out there and blame those other sources for whatever mistakes we appear to be making. It's not, I don't want to be the one responsible for all that. All right.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that a lot. And also maybe if it's like a yearly meeting, then well, we should have a meeting to talk about it and having the form and to submit it and the best practices. And then if there's a taxon that keeps on getting flipped back and forth, or if there's like that keeps on changing, that might be good to set aside for discussion. So that it's not constantly being flipped back and forth. Okay. I will work on that.
I've got a question.
No, go for it.
Can you hear me? I got a question. Okay.
Yes.
So in the lichen world, we have a couple of major taxonomic databases, one being MycoNet and the other one being Index Fungorum. And we refer to those for the correct or the current accepted name and list of synonyms. On occasion, they're not completely up to date, and on occasion, they don't agree with each other. So if we run into a situation where there is disagreement or it has been updated, there are contact folks that you can email and ask them to look into it. And more often than not, they're really helpful, and they will look into the issue and make any adjustments or updates. So is there something like that in the plant world? I mean, do you have an online list or database of plant taxonomy in North America, or are you just going by weekly for now for the current area?
There's Flora of North America, right?
Yeah. So I guess to follow up on something that Alan Weekly just shared with me, was that some of the sources he's been relying on are a combination of Flora of North America, Plants of the World Online, and a few others. And Gary, I see your point, and I've seen that same thing happen in the vascular plant world too. It's like it seems like these nomenclators that are supposed to be vetted and everything are just in total disagreement, and it is, you can conceive that it's possible that happens because It's just a matter of when those data are getting updated. And in my experience, how some of these things work is you might have somebody that works strictly on sunflowers, and that they are the world's expert on that the genus Helianthus or something like that. And they create this world checklist, and you know, the community agrees that person is the go-to person, that we should follow their synonymy and that sort of stuff. And they share those data with something like Index fungorum or one of the nomenclators that we would use in the vascular plant world, and then they are then vetted by that team that manages the nomenclator and finally incorporated into it. So that could take a year or more or something just to get those kind of data published online. So there's definitely a lag time, and depending on how those different sort of taxon resource data aggregators work, they may eventually sort of balance each other out. Now, as far as like contacts or like a readily available go-to person for suggesting these edits and stuff, I don't know. I'm sure they are out there. I haven't really dug into that. So yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead. That's great discussion, everybody. I've taken some notes of some things to follow up. So I will do that.
Looks like Michael has a question.
Yep.
Oh,
I can
sorry.
make just one comment. Jen alluded to this. In California, this is very pertinent. We're discussing this right now, some type of taxonomic advisory committee for the records in the state anyway. And I think the plan will be to divide that committee up into experts in different groups, like probably by order, Asterales, Borraginales, etc. People who really know the group, and they'll be responsible for the thesaurus. However, in our case, we're trying to match it to our state flora, the Jebsen E flora. That is the goal. There will always be some disagreements here and there. And also the Jebsen E flora, has a time lag. So there'll be some obviously new species and some major taxonomic changes that will take half a year or a year to get in the Jebsen E flora. So I think our plan is to have that statement. We follow the Jebsen E flora nomenclature for California plants with these exceptions, have a link to it, and then list, hey, these are new species, or this is a new molecular phylogenetic analysis. We're going to rearrange, maybe some of the genera so that they're there. But as long as all the synonyms are there, you can still do a search either way. So that's our current plan. But this is great, good discussion. Okay.
No, that's so great to hear. Thank you. I really like that. That's really smart, dividing it up by groups. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. All right. Perfect. Does anybody have anything else? Sorry, I looked down and I didn't see your hand was raised, but does anybody have anything else to say before we move on? Let's see. So future meeting topics. So we will have our big SC Consortium meeting, in-person meeting in the beginning of August. But we do also have regular meetings. So Avery and I have worked tirelessly on data standards for entry. Long term, just heads up, we are making some edits. We just heard from at the Symbiota meeting, there are going to be some changes to the location fields coming up. So we're going to incorporate that into the standards, and we will try to get them printed and handed out. We might be able to mail some of them to people. Again, a huge purpose for us doing this is for skeleton crew herbaria who need to hand out booklets or something to student volunteers because they don't have time to focus on training. We also I plan to add some more examples of some more weird stuff that has popped up on South Carolina labels and go from there. So I also, there is a research professor who is doing work with the cultural aspects of plants. Right now, he is working on Venus flytraps. And so I would like him to, I've talked to him, he is willing to come. I would like to set up a time for him to come and speak to you all, because one of the ways that it's to keep Herbaria relevant to your university is to engage different departments. So he works with law and with humanities. So that is a good way of thinking about involving other departments with your herbarium at your institution. Um, Beyond that, is there anything that you guys want to see a discussion about, that we can add to the list? Go ahead.
Are we going to talk about the South Carolina Plant Atlas at some point?
Yes.
Okay.
SC Plant Atlas, the first set of data has been sent. I don't think the website is live yet. Our team has started putting together so we're at 4,536 vascular species, and I think we have about 2,000 photos ready for them, to be matched up. Lichens, I'm doing my best. um, so I that will have to wait. That's not going to come rolled out in the first version. Even though I would really like it to be, I am starting to learn as I'm doing more work that some of specimens are misidentified. So I'm hesitant to just right now my approach. I'm For the background for everybody on this call. I deal with the lichens the best I can, but I'm a baby lichenologist. I'm still learning. So really the only thing I have to go off of is the export from Lichen Portal. And so at first our idea was to just take everything that occurs in South Carolina and add that to the plant atlas. But then I realized there were some taxonomic issues and some misidentifications there. Also, I was trying to use Esslinger's North American list to work out the synonymy. So Gary might be able to speak to this. I was told by Scott that that is the synonymy table to use. Is that correct? But then you said mycoportal.
Yeah, I'll agree to that.
Something else. I'm sorry?
Right. Mycoportal and Index fungorum are really the more up-to-date ones because Esslinger is dated 2021, and I've been told that there should be a more recent revision due to come out, but I'm just checking every day to see when it pops in. So, but meanwhile, I'm just, scouring the literature and, just making sure everything's up to date that way for the USDA plants, which trickles down, to the state level as well. And on that note, on occasion, I do run into some questionable records, and I have asked various herbaria, including Clemson, for specimens for re-examination to see if their identities are correct or not.
Sounds good. There is one sort of species I am really good with. I did recently update their Teleschistes. They had some Exilus specimens that were misidentified, but I did fix that. But yeah, they do. The Siegler collection is very old and has not been touched. That's part of the problem.
Yep.
The Siegler collection has not been touched or annotated for a while.
Right, and those are the specimens that I'm primarily requesting for re-examination. So I mean, I do acknowledge that a lot of them are older, primarily collected back in the 90s, and taxonomy, as we know, has really taken off in the molecular age. It was just in its baby steps back then. So the good news is that we do have a list of synonyms, and so the older synonyms can be linked to the more update ones. but nevertheless, specimens do need to be re-examined just to make sure they're accurate.
Yeah, I'll add essay plant Ellis to the list. Is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about?
So I'll just rattle off a few things. We had engaged in a brief discussion, and maybe I don't know if you mentioned this at the beginning of the thing, but the addition of a resources link to or a link to a page from the SERENEC portal for
Yes.
resources, and I just thrown out there we could put that into a GitHub pages site pretty easily, but there's a 2 gig limit. But I think, and Gary, maybe you guys can speak to this because I'm pretty sure you'll have it on the Lichen portal. But the page itself would be really lightweight and may consist of some text, but largely would have outlinks to existing resources. Because I know App State has the original CERNEC site with all the original resources there. I know that here at the USC Herbarium, we've put together a whole digitarium thing. There's a lot of documentation on it, and there may be others that are put up by other portals like CCH2 or something like that we might want to share the information from. So that was one thing that I think might be good to talk about a little bit more. And then the other thing that we did here recently at USC was we were going through all these hoops of trying to do some things, and one of them was getting a certificate of scientific exchange, which is a thing that's registered with CITES and allows sort of smooths international shipments through customs and that sort of thing. But the vetting agency on the U.S. side is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, so you have to go through this whole application process. And they asked of us, do you have a collections management policy? Well, we do, but we didn't have it all written down. So we wrote it down. And that might be something, I mean, we've already put it on our website as another resource, but it might be something for other folks to consider because it might be a good game plan to have for, administration and, anything like that. So collections management policies might be another cool topic.
Perfect. I've added that to the list. All right. Well, we are hitting the hour. So thank you guys so much for everything and for joining. I'm excited to see everybody who can come in person to the meeting. If not, I will be sending out invites for Zoom as well if you can only attend virtually, and it will be recorded and posted online. So very excited about that, and you will be receiving more information about it. So have a great Friday, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks so much, Celia.